Their sleeping bags were arranged around a symbol drawn in the dirt. At first I thought Owen was playing some private joke. He had gone to sleep after midnight with his boots still on, drunk on cheap whiskey and the kind of confidence that only survives out here until the sun goes down. He was the sort of person who liked to wake first and stand over everyone else with a grin. The symbol looked like something he would have done to make us feel stupid. 3 circles intersecting, a line cutting through them, all of it pressed carefully into the powdery ground at the center of our little camp. But Owen was still asleep. I stood there with the cold of dawn soaking through my socks, staring at the shallow grooves. The dirt was pale and dry on top, black underneath where the stick had turned it over. There were no footprints across it. That was what made me keep looking. For sleeping bags, evenly spaced, all facing inward as if somebody had arranged us while we slept. Mine had been nearest the fire pit. I remembered that clearly. Now it lay opposite Mara's, almost touching the ring of stones. The woods were colorless with morning fog. Our tent stood 20 feet away between 2 firs, the fly silver with dew. Behind it the trees rose close together, trunks dark as wet iron. I could smell cold ash, pine resin, damp canvas. Usually mornings in the forest came layered with small noises. Birds trading calls, insects worrying the grass, wind combing the branches. That morning there was only the thin hiss of the creek somewhere downhill. Mara pushed herself upright and rubbed her face. "Why are you standing there like that?" I pointed. Her expression changed before she spoke. "Did you do that?" "No. Owen. He's still out." She crawled free of her bag, hugging her jacket around herself. Lucas woke next, then Owen, all of us standing in a crooked circle around the mark. Owen swore he hadn't touched anything. He sounded genuinely irritated, which made me believe him more than if he had laughed. Lucas said maybe we had kicked everything around in the dark. He always reached for explanations quickly, as if speed could make them stronger. But none of us remembered waking. None of us remembered moving. That was before we slept. Before I woke in the dark with the feeling that somebody had spoken directly beside my face. I had opened my eyes into blackness. The fire was out. My sleeping bag felt strangely tight around my shoulders. I remember the smell most clearly. Cold earth, wet bark, and something faintly sour, like stagnant water trapped in stone. I lay still, waiting for another sound. Nothing came. After a minute, I heard Mara breathing somewhere nearby. I told myself that was all it had been. The woods settling. A dream. Then I went back under. Now the daylight made it feel stupid to mention. Owen scuffed the symbol away with his boot. "There. Problem solved." He said it too loudly. We made coffee and oatmeal. Nobody ate much. Even Owen kept glancing over his shoulder. The silence pressed harder as the morning widened. No birds. No squirrels cracking branches. Even the creek sounded muted, as if something heavy hung in the air between us and the water. The trail was hardly a trail anymore, only patches of flattened needles. The air smelled mineral and cold. Every few minutes one of us stopped and listened. Not because we heard anything, because we didn't. When camp came into view, I stopped walking. The sleeping bags were outside the fire ring again. Not scattered. Arranged. The symbol had returned beneath them. Darker now, carved deeper into the dirt. For a second, nobody moved. Then Owen laughed once. A short bark with no humor in it. "All right," he said. "Who the hell is here?" His voice vanished into the trees. No answer. No rustle. No bird bursting upward. He started walking the perimeter of camp, kicking through brush, swearing louder each minute. Lucas followed with the hatchet. Mara stood so close to me I could feel her sleeve against mine. Her hand was cold. "There has to be somebody," she whispered. I nodded because speaking felt difficult. Owen came back sweating. "Nothing." We packed immediately. That should have taken 15 minutes. Took nearly an hour because all of us kept stopping. Every few seconds I would lift my head, certain I had heard a footstep just beyond sight. Not a branch snapping, something softer. Weight settling. A breath held too long. We started down the trail fast. Nobody suggested staying another night. Lucas led. I walked behind Mara. Owen took the rear. After 10 minutes he said, "Don't stop." No one had. "What?" Lucas called. I said, "Don't stop turning around." We all turned anyway. Owen was staring into the trees on our left. His face had gone pale under the beard. "What did you see?" Mara asked. He swallowed. I don't know. Someone walking between the trunks." "Where?" He pointed. There was nothing there. Only shadow and bark and vertical ranks of fur disappearing into dimness. But while we stood looking, I felt it again. That exact pressure from the night before. The unmistakable conviction that attention had settled on us. Not movement, not sound. Tension. My skin tightened along my arms. "Go," Lucas said. We went. The farther downhill we moved, the more unfamiliar the trail became. I remembered stepping over a fallen log on the hike in. Now there were two. Then a stretch of bare stone I did not recognize at all. Lucas stopped twice to check the map on his phone before remembering there was no signal. His hands were shaking enough that he nearly dropped it. "We're still heading south," he said. "How do you know?" Owen asked. Lucas looked up at the white sky. "I just do." By late afternoon I realized we had not heard the creek in a long time. That frightened me more than anything yet. We should have crossed it within an hour of leaving camp. I said that aloud. Nobody answered. The silence around us had become so complete that our breathing sounded intrusive. Once Mara stumbled and the scrape of her boot against stone made all four of us flinch. Then we found the fire ring. It sat in a shallow clearing 20 yards ahead. Gray stones, half-burned logs, our empty food packet caught under a root. For several seconds my mind refused to understand what I was seeing. Lucas said no very softly, as if speaking to himself. Owen began backing away. "We walked straight," he said. "We walked straight." The sleeping bags were there too, arranged around the symbol. Mara made a sound I had never heard from a human throat. After that things became less reliable inside my head. I remember Owen running. He crashed into the trees to our right so suddenly none of us reacted. Branches snapped. Then nothing. We shouted for him. No answer. Lucas started after him. I grabbed his jacket so hard the seam tore. "Don't." He stared at me with eyes too wide to recognize. "We can't just." A tap landed lightly on my shoulder. I spun so fast I nearly fell. "Nothing." Mara was crying. "Did you feel that?" Another tap, this time on the back of my neck, gentle as a fingertip, came from above. All three of us looked up. The canopy was motionless. Hundreds of black branches crossing against the white sky. For a moment I saw only needles. Then my eyes adjusted and depth returned, and I understood why the silence felt so enormous. Every branch above camp was crowded with small pale shapes. Not birds, not nests, lengths of stripped wood, dozens of them, hanging downward on thin fibers, turning almost invisibly in the airless cold. Each one ended just above head height. When one swayed it touched skin with a soft dry knock. Mara screamed. Lucas swung the hatchet upward. The nearest pale length snapped sideways, then drifted back. I remember the smell rising then. Wet mineral, stagnant water, something old sealed underground. We ran without direction. Branches hit my face. My lungs burned. Twice I went down and clawed back up. Somewhere behind me Mara was sobbing my name. Somewhere ahead Lucas kept shouting that he could see light. Then the creek appeared. I fell into it almost to my knees. The water was so cold it felt hot. We staggered along the bank until the trees thinned and the trail opened under us like something remembered. At dusk we reached the logging road. Lucas and I, only us, we waited until dark, calling. No answer came except the creek. We walked out at midnight. At the ranger station they searched until morning. They found our campsite exactly where Lucas had marked it. No symbol, no sleeping bags, no Owen, no Mara. For weeks afterward I woke with the feeling of breath above my face. In the city I started noticing long pauses in traffic noise, little pockets of impossible quiet. Once on the train, a child across from me leaned toward his mother and asked why that man kept looking at the ceiling. I haven't been back. Lucas won't speak to me now. He moved away last winter. The last time we met, he asked whether I had ever remembered anything else about that night. I told him no. That was a lie. Sometimes, just before sleep, I remember opening my eyes in the dark and hearing something beside my ear. Not words exactly, more like the shape of words, patient sound, almost curious. And beneath it, very close, the slow drag of fabric over dirt, as though something had been making room for us. A figure stood on the ridge, but its outline flickered like a glitching screen. I saw it just as the last of the evening light drained out of the valley. At first I thought it was my eyes. The climb had been long, the air thinning and cold enough to sting the back of my throat. I had stopped at the overlook to catch my breath, watching the forest below sink into shadow. The pines filled the basin like ink. Above them, the opposite ridge still held a narrow band of orange light. That was where the figure stood. It looked human in the simplest sense. Upright, narrow, still. Then it skipped. Not moved. Skipped. Its outline fractured into thin horizontal bands like a screen losing signal, then snapped back into place. I blinked hard. The smell of damp granite and pine hung in the air. Somewhere far below, water slid over rock in a faint metallic thread. Otherwise, the mountain had gone quiet in a way that felt wrong. No birds, no insects. Even the wind moved without touching anything. I raised my hand to shade my eyes. The figure remained. I had come up alone. That had been the point. The apartment still felt full of Leah even after she left. Unfinished sentences, things we hadn't said. I wanted distance. Something clean and cold enough to think in. The flicker came again. Longer this time. The ridge behind it showed through its body in faint strips. Then it closed again. I started down the trail. The path curved through low fir and scrub oak, the ground soft with needles. Every few steps, gravel ticked downhill behind me. I kept glancing through the trees toward the ridge. Sometimes I saw it. Sometimes I didn't. Each time it returned, something tightened in my chest. At the saddle, I stopped. The trail should have bent left toward the road. Instead, it ran straight into trees I didn't remember. I turned. For a moment, I couldn't place anything. The overlook was gone in shadow. The valley below had flattened into darkness. Even the sky felt wrong, light lingering where it shouldn't. Then I saw it again. Closer. Standing through the trees, maybe 80 yards away. There had been no sound of movement, no branches shifting. Yet it was nearer. "Hey!" I called. My voice fell flat. No answer. I pulled out my phone. No signal. The battery had dropped fast. The screen flared too bright, thin white lines sliding across it before dimming again. The air turned colder. I stepped back. The figure didn't move. Then it flickered sideways. Not a step. A shift. One instant between two trunks, the next several feet to the left. My mouth went dry. I backed away until my heel slipped off the edge of a shallow drop. I fell hard onto gravel. Stones skipped away into darkness. When I looked up, the figure was gone. The trees stood empty. Then something flashed to my right. A thin, pale distortion slid between the trunks, like glass dragged through the air. It vanished instantly, but the smell changed. No longer pine, but something mineral and stale. I got up and moved quickly. The trail felt wrong. It forked where I didn't remember forks. Once I passed a split boulder, then passed it again from the opposite side. I stopped. The silence pressed so tightly I could hear my pulse. My watch read 6:41. Seconds later, it read 6:14. Then the numbers blinked out. My hands shook. Without thinking, I called Leah. The phone rang once, then burst into static. Beneath it was a pattern, 3 soft clicks, a pause, then 3 more. I hung up. Across the trees, a pale flicker answered. I ran. Branches scraped my face. My breath tore cold in my chest. The phone light jittered, then cut out completely for a second. The darkness felt thick enough to press against. The clicking came again. Above me, I looked up and nearly fell. The canopy was full of faint lights, not stars. Dozens of pale points blinking in and out among the branches. Whenever they vanished together, the dark deepened. When they returned, the trees seemed slightly misplaced. I couldn't tell if I was going up or down. Then the trees opened. I stumbled into the overlook where I had started. My water bottle still sat on the rock. The sky hadn't changed. The same band of orange burned across the opposite ridge. I had been moving for over an hour. Across the valley, the figure stood in the same place. It flickered. Then I understood something that made my stomach drop. It wasn't facing me. It was turned slightly away, looking past the overlook. At something behind me. I didn't want to turn. The air dropped colder. The skin along my neck tightened. I turned anyway. Something stood 10 feet away at the tree line. Not a person. Parts of it lagged behind each other, shoulder, then head. Its outline tore into thin bands. In those gaps, the forest showed through. I couldn't move. The light around it pulsed once. Everything sharpened. Stone, needles, my breath in the air. Then the world jumped. I was on my knees. My palms scraped raw. My phone lay nearby, its screen cracked white. The shape was closer. The air smelled electrical now, sharp and dry. When I looked straight at it, it broke apart. When I looked slightly away, it sharpened. It raised an arm. Not toward me, toward the ridge. I turned. There were more. One on the ridge. One lower in the trees. One behind me, each flickering at a different rhythm. The mountain itself seemed to pulse. Light, dark, light. The valley broke into bands. For a second I thought I saw the parking lot far below. Then it vanished. Then I heard Leah say my name. Very close. I ran toward it. After that, everything blurred, branches, stone, mud. The voice stayed just ahead, never louder, never farther. Then real light appeared. Warm, steady. I stumbled onto the road and nearly collided with a ranger's truck. He said I looked half frozen. Asked where I'd been. Pointed back. The ridge was dark. Nothing there. He drove me down. Gave me coffee that tasted metallic. Listened. Then said altitude and cold could distort perception. Maybe. When I woke the next day, my phone was dead. The repair shop said its clock had corrupted. All photos from that evening were gone. For days after, I woke before dawn, convinced someone stood beside the bed. The room would be cold, the window casting pale horizontal bands across the wall. Sometimes I heard it then. 3 soft clicks. Last week, I stopped at a red light and looked up at a building across the street. A figure stood on the roof. Its outline flickered in thin horizontal strips. It was turned slightly away, looking at something behind me. I didn't turn. The light changed. People moved around me. I kept watching. Then the glass doors below caught my reflection. For a moment, it didn't move when I did. When it finally did, it turned its head. Not toward me, toward whatever had stopped behind me.